Hello, this is Marilyn Atkinson from Vancouver, and I'm talking to coaches about mindfulness coaching and using mindfulness as part of your coaching practice. Coaches, mindfulness is a big part of coaching in general. Mindfulness means that we are able to really focus in and at the same time expand out our awareness. Mindfulness means that we are listening with all the necessary levels of awareness, and we're staying with our client and not being distracted by any thoughts that come up from the tone of voice they have or the words they're using. We just be present. So mindfulness is a wonderful way to develop all of your abilities as a human, and in particular, your inner skills as a coach. Now, it's also really relevant in time of stress. Mindfulness is one of the best ways to work with workplace stress, but also critical social stresses, like the ones that happen when something very unexpected creates turmoil in a culture or society. So I'd like to give you some stress tools from mindfulness, really useful stress tools. And I'll start by telling you a story. This is a story from my early 20s. I was at that point a psychologist, or rather my late 20s. I was working as a psychologist, and I was also working with some students. I understood quite a lot about stress at that point. It was an important area of my own building blocks, and I really spent a little time developing an interest in how people recovered from stressful incidents, because that was really part of my own history. Now, at this point, a person who I knew told me that her uncle was in hospital with a serious operation happening the next day. He was going to have a bypass operation. It was a 6-way bypass operation, a big one, and he wasn't prepared at all. She was very worried about him, and she felt like his chance of living was not very likely. This was a big issue because he was talking as if he was going to die. And the more she heard him, the more she believed him. He'd heard from the doctors that it was a real touch-and-go operation, and he thought his last day had come. So she said, "Please, you're a psychologist, come and talk with him. Come and use some of your abilities with my uncle." I agreed. We went to the hospital. There he lay in bed, white as a sheet. And indeed, she was quite right. He was most depressed about the possibility of survival. And I sat there with her and him for a while and realized that they loved each other, that she really cared about him, and that if he was going to live, he needed to shift his attitude right away. The operation was the next day. So I invited him. I said, and I invite you as well as you listen to this, remember a really peaceful, wonderful, empowering time in your life, would you? Remember a peaceful place where you once were, And what happened there that made it that kind of a place for you? Now, some people think about mountains they've climbed, or gardens they've planted, or parks they've sat in. We all find our peaceful place in surprising places. I often go in my mind to a wonderful rock on the Pacific Ocean where I sit and look out at the sunrises and sunsets and really appreciate my life. So what's a peaceful place for you? Now, with my friend's uncle, it took a little while for him to actually think of something. But did his face ever change when he suddenly remembered it? His eyes lit up. The first color came into his cheeks I'd seen that day. He said, "Back on the boat." I asked him, "What boat?" Well, he said, "When I was younger," he said, "I was the captain of a tugboat, and we'd start out early in the morning just at dawn, and I'd be skippering, and out we'd go towards the rising sun, and the wind would be in my hair, and suddenly he was there." And I said, "Tell me more. Be back on the boat." He says, "Well, the wind's in my hair, and I can smell the sea smells, and I can also smell the kerosene in the engine. It's right behind me, and the chug-a-chug of the motor, and I can taste the coffee I'm drinking. I'm really in love with life back on the boat." And he started to really smile, remembering those moments. I loved every day starting out. I said, just be back there now. Allow yourself that feeling full on. Feel what it's like. You're standing there, the wind's in your hair, you're smelling your cup of coffee, you're hearing the birds, you're smelling the sea breeze. Be back on the boat. And as he really went into that, I said, and make a fist right now to just anchor that experience so you can feel it any time. Now he did that. I had him replay it several times, go back to that moment, make that fist, and now listen to the sound of the fan in the room as well. And he kept building his knowledge, that knowledge of his own strength. He says, those were good times. And I said, yeah, and there can be good times to come. Feel your fist and think about the good times to come. And he did. And then I gave him a plan. I assisted him to make that plan and to go ahead with it. And the plan was simple. Tomorrow morning, as they wheel you towards the operating room, hold your fist, be back on the boat. Remember how the sunrise looks. Remember the birds. Remember the smell of the coffee. Enjoy being back on the boat. And stay with that as they begin the whole procedure. And later coming out, once again, back on the boat. So that you bring that strength with you. You enable that strength through your whole system. He agreed, and I went home. In the following days, his niece told me that instead of having a very difficult time like the doctors had warned, he was healing fast. And when she went to see him, he would say, well, he says, I'm back on the boat. I was back on the boat as soon as I left the operation, and I allowed myself that feeling every day since. And he says, I'm feeling energy again. Now, everyone, we have our own boat, don't we? We have our own crossing, our own focus in these difficult times. But we all have those points of courage. We all have that inner knowledge of where we're strong. And we can take it with us as we work with others. We can also assist them in the very same way. So coaches, take time with people to invite them to find their own moments of courage and care, their own moments where they know they're strong to face the difficult times. Help them find their own stories. Help them enter their own realms of inner power. Thank you.